Everybody. It is now 2 p.m. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let some people trickle in. So at 2:02, we will start the presentation. All right, it's now 2:02, so we can go ahead and get started with today's presentation. Once again, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us for this How to Apply webinar for the Volkswagen Community and Destination Charging ZEV Infrastructure Program. My name is Matthew Hoskins, an environmental specialist here with the Division of Air Quality, and I'm joined today by Dave Willis, the program manager for this VW program. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. Questions can be submitted in the Q&A box down in the lower right-hand corner and will be addressed during the question and answer session if not covered during the presentation. The raise hand feature will be disabled until the question and answer session and will only be considered for those who called into this webinar by phone. For those calling in, pressing star 3 will raise your hand and pressing star 3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the Q&A box to submit questions. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the DAQ website at a later date. Finally, we have 1 hour scheduled for this webinar, but if we complete everything and answer all the questions with some time to spare, then we do have the option to adjourn early. If we are not able to answer all questions by the end of our time, we will let you know how to get your questions to us. So with that, I will now hand it over to Dave Willis for today's presentation. Dave?
Thank you, Matthew. Again, my name is Dave Willis. I'm an environmental program consultant with the Division of Air Quality. I am the Volkswagen Settlement DC Fast Program Manager, and we will be talking about our Community and Destination ZEV program today. So, what can you expect today? We're going to talk about the charging program. We're going to talk about when and how to submit your application, how to find more information after this workshop, and we're going to do our best to answer your questions that you have. Just as a reminder, this is not a public forum for comments on the implementation of the Volkswagen settlement. So, for our timeline that we're looking at right now, the RFP was released October 15th. Applications start tomorrow in the GMS, November 15th. The applications are due January 31st, 2025. The proposals will be evaluated in February of 2025. The project selections will occur in March, and then we'll do our best to announce awards in April. So who's eligible for this? Pretty much any business entity, a government organization or a non-government organization is going to be eligible. If your specific entity isn't covered in the RFP, you can email us and we'll see see how you can apply. But basically, this boils down to anybody but an individual can apply for our funds. So we have just under $1.9 million available in this funding. The chargers must be publicly accessible. The applications must include at least one DC fast charger, and that's unless the applicant is replacing a storm damaged ZEV infrastructure in one of the federally major disaster designated counties, and that's going to be after September 2024. We will need some documentation to kind of show what your site and what was there. Also, the sites must be 1 mile off the North Carolina alternative fuel corridors. We have a table in the RFP that has that, and we also have a map that kind of that shows the alternative fuel corridors across the state. So just as a reminder, you must be 1 mile off one of these corridors. Now, if you're replacing storm damaged EV chargers, those sites must be located in counties covered by a federally major disaster declaration from the United States on or after September 2024 in North Carolina, and you can apply for standalone level 2 chargers. We will allow those to be awarded up to 100% for government or 80% for non-government for eligible costs. And that's outside the funding that we have in the tables below. We will do up to 100% for those. If you're replacing storm damaged DC fast chargers, that's going to be a per port cost for the DC fast, and that's in the table below, and that's applicable. So this is a competitive reimbursement program. That means we will score all these projects, and it is competitive. We score them, it goes to a selection committee. The selection committee selects them based off the score. So this is a table for funding for DC fast. It's based off of how many kilowatts are available at each port. Just as a reminder, one port must be 50 kilowatts. If for some reason you have, say, like an 80 kilowatt charger that has 2 ports on it, it can charge 2 vehicles at the same time. That would only be one port because the per port minimum is 50 kilowatts. And if you half 80, it goes to 40. So that would drop below the 50 kilowatt minimum. This is pretty self-explanatory. If you're government, you're eligible for 100%. If you're non-government, you're eligible for up to 80% with the per port limits for each kilowatt category. We will fund up to 4 ports per application. And this is 100% or 80% or whichever is less on these per port amounts. Just remember when we start talking about budgets and things like that, these are competitive. So you need to make sure you come in with at least some cost share for these projects to make sure you are competitive. For the level 2, for the add-ons, you can add up to 8 level 2 chargers or eight ports. For government property, that's 8,000 per port, or for non-government owned property, that's 6,000 per port, or 80%, and that's whichever is less. So when you start talking about what you need to apply, we do have a checklist, an application checklist. We have a link to that. All the links in this will be active and available when we post this presentation to our website. So for GMS access, you have to have an NCID. You have to request access. We'll talk about the NCID in a second. But for project information, you basically have to have your GPS coordinates. You have to know what type of charging equipment you're going to apply for, how many ports, how many parking spaces, the model, manufacturer, that kind of thing. You're going to need cost estimates for your materials, your services, your labor to get those in the ground. You're going to have a site host letter of commitment that's different from your site host agreement. This is just a letter saying the site host is signing it saying, hey, yeah, we want this site on our property. We understand that the site host letters are a little bit, agreements are a little bit more of a legal document, and those will take time, and we'll have to have those at the time of the contract when that comes through. Um, so we'll need a local map just showing the amenities that are around the area. We also need a site map that shows, okay, well, this is the site, this is the buildings that are on site, and this is the parking places, and this is where the charger is going to be. Any other additional documentation to support the application, including surveys that were done, um, letters of agreement or just support for the site from the local community, the local businesses around it, if it's a government, um, support from your town council, whatever you have would for other supporting documentation that you want to include in your application. And all that would be uploaded to your application when you submit that. So do not wait to the last week. That's going to be the biggest problem most people have. You cannot wait till the last week to get access to the grant management system. If you wait till after January 13th of 2025, we can't guarantee you access. It basically, you send in your request to us, then it goes to a security team. That's completely outside of the Division of Air Quality. So you have to have this done before January 13th, or we cannot guarantee you access into the grant management system. So how do you get an NCID? You can use this link if you're non-government. Some government agencies have to use their own local agency. They have an NCID appointed representative that they would have to get their NCID with. But the basics are the same. Your NCID, it has to be in a specific format. It's going to have to be your first name, your initial, last name, some form of that. In this example, we have Wally E. Coyote. For him, it would be Wally Coyote, Wally E. Coyote, Wally Coyote 2, W. Coyote. Those are just some examples of what you can do for your NCID. It must be your name and not the name of your company or organization. So I couldn't have an NCID that was for the DEQ 02 or something like that. It needs to be for me and not the organization that I represent. So we're also going to ask for a W-2, a substitute W-2, not the federal form. You can do this when you're submitting your stuff, or if you don't, you can do your submission, then we're going to request your W-9. We have to have this to link you and your business entity together. This is not your social security number. This is the 10 from the business that you represent. So to get in the grant management system, you're going to have an NCID. Then you're going to have to request access. During this request access, you're going to pull up and follow this link to request access. But the very first thing is we're the Department of Air Quality. So you're going to have to, in that drop down box, select Department of Air Quality, and then that's going to change the form to all the pieces that we need specifically for us. So We do have a couple of limitations on that. There can only be 3 authorized users from each business entity. Um, so usually that is a project manager, a financial manager, and the responsible official. Um, that's just the way it's laid out. We can clean those up if people have left your organization and you have some people that are still in the system. So we can handle all that at the same time. We just need to know it. There is a box in the that you can put comments in here, and that would also need to come in from the on the W-9, the email that you send to us, that we could have old users removed out at that time. So once we get through that, you've made it through us. We've checked and verified your W-9's in. We've sent it to the security team. The security team's processed it. Then you're going to get an email back from the business system, the enterprise business system, that says, welcome to the enterprise business system. It doesn't say GMS, but this is the portal that lets you into the grant management system. And it's going to give you a little bit of information. I suggest you save this email because it gives you the links to go to reset your NCID, and it also gives you the link to the EBS system. So when you log in for the first time, it's going to pop up electronic business system, enterprise business system, and you're going to enter your NCID, username, and password. I'd just like to point out that we do have some additional information that you can find about the grant management system on our website. And then we also have a downloadable GMS user manual that will walk you through all the steps of creating an application, a claim, all the things that you need to do in the system. So when you log in, you should see a tile screen that looks like this. The very first one is going to be the division of air quality. If for some reason you don't see that tile, that's what you should see to get in. There are instructions in the user manual on how to add it. You can add it manually. But when they log you in, the security team should add that automatically to your tile. Now, when you log into the grant management system, it's going to pop up a screen that looks like this. It's going to have a training library is the available in the web links. You can see that circled there. This is going to be pretty important because we have 4 major holidays coming up before these applications are due, where you're not going to have employees for us that are available to answer questions. There's a lot of self-help in there that kind of walks you through almost all the situations you're going to run into. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, how do you create an application? In the search tile, you'll notice that it says create new application, create new claim, view application, view agreements. We're trying to create a new application. I think that would be very straightforward. You're creating a new application. So when you do that, it's going to pop up this search bar. It's going to search. You don't have to put anything in, just hit search. Anything in our system that's available, which right now there's only one as of today. The DERA grants are the only thing that's available. Tomorrow there will be 2 things here where you have the phase 2 community and destination charging grants will be available. That's what you're going to click on. You click on it. If you'll notice the application form, you're going to click on this right here, and you're going to go into the application. Now the application is going to pop up. It's going to automatically fill things from your business entity because we've linked you to that business. Your username is going to pop up in the first green box, but today's date, your organization name, and your TIN are going to pop up. You're going to have to start off by giving your project a title and start entering in the information that you have for your location. So you need your street address, the city, your latitude, longitude, the distance off the interchanges, some of those things about your site. Now, I would suggest that every time you start, you can check each page of the application and make sure you've entered all the information that you're required. I would also suggest that as you go through this, you save and close. We do not have a save and continue, and we'll talk about how to get back in your application in a minute. But each time, I would suggest that you save and close as you go through this so you don't lose any information. You can always go back in and edit your application. So as we go through the contacts, and you'll see these tabs across here, these you can go through these in any order you want. But what we would like are 3 contacts for the project. Sometimes they're going to be all the same person. You can copy that information down. If the authorized person is the project manager and the financial contact, feel free to use those copy buttons. If not, we would like at least 2, but we know with some projects you're either in a small business or a smaller community, you might not have 3 different contacts for us. We would like more than 1, but that's not always possible. And then the charging details tab. Basically, we're looking for the number of chargers. It's going to pre-fill some of this. It starts with number 1 for multiple chargers if you have, um, but we want this to total up to the total of, so if it's a 100 kilowatt charger, that's 2 ports. You'd put in 1 line, the manufacturer, the model, and then the number of ports would be 2. The number of parking spaces for that charger would hopefully be 3. It would have to be 2 or 3. And then your charging capacity would be 100 kilowatts. Then if you have another charger and you go down, you do the same thing again, number of ports, 2, 2, and then 100. That will total out, so it'll give you 200 kilowatts per site, however it works out. We're looking for the total capacity of the site, and then it'll automatically total that for you. You can obviously, again, check, save and close, or go to the next one. So in the budget, this is a little bit more, we are asking for how much you're requesting, how much you're matching, and then it's going to total that to the project totals on the left. So you're requesting how much funds from us, how much you're expecting as your cost share, and then if you have other funding. So if you're getting another grant from Duke Power or a local community, or you've got matching funds that are local, um, we expect those funds to be listed here. Again, make sure you're saving this as you go along. Okay, now we're getting into the narrative of this. This is a little bit small. You probably can't read it all. But if you are applying in a federal major disaster declaration county, please clearly state it in the first line of this first narrative box. And let's just walk through these narratives to make sure that I pulled them out into a text format to make it easier for you guys. We're really can't iterate it enough. These need to be clear and concise. Um, this is not dissertation. We need them to describe your project. They are used to clarify any information about your project that we have. This is the where you get to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, who's benefiting from it. That's going to be pretty important because if there is a tie, we do use these to break those ties. So for the first one, if you're applying for a disaster area, we need that statement first. But we'd like details about a detailed description about your proposed project. Describe your procurement, installation, activation, commissioning, testing, and signage. Um, what your timeline for that is. Describe collaborations with your utility, local businesses, city, county, or other entities. We just want to know that you know what you're talking about and what you're getting into by putting some of these in. Um, so number two, explain how this request fits into the North Carolina beneficiary mitigation plan. Talk about that, how you can be supportive of reducing the NOx in your area. What's the likelihood of this project will incentivize future indirect NOx and other emission reductions? Um, we also want to know about your renewable energy credits, energy certifications. If you're going to do that, please provide us details about the plan um, for any of the renewable energy certificates that you're going to use for this. If it's going to be 100%, we need to know where you're getting those RECs from. We will need signed copies of the agreements for that if you have an agreement for 100% power replacement or offsets. Project feasibility. We want a description of how you as the applicant have the necessary technical, managerial, procurement, and financial capabilities and experience to execute on your project. Also, number six is kind of a free for all. Anything that we haven't covered before that you think might be additional information that we need to know about your project. Just remember that if these get too long, they do clip out. There are some limits to each of the text field. Um, please be concise and clear. If you need more information, you can do it as an additional attachment in your um, application. Now, when you're ready to submit, the best thing to do is go back and check again and save and check it, save and close. So when you save, we've talked about saving and closing your application. Since there's no save and go on, you save and close. It's going to save. It's going to tell you it's saved successfully, and then it's going to give you your application number. So if you remember that first screen, we talked about several different things being in there. Um, you can create a new application, edit an application form. If you've already created it and you've saved it and you're going back in it, you're going to edit that application form. So when you choose edit, it's going to pull up that same search box. You can pop that application ID in and click search, and it's going to pull up your application. For you guys, it would be you can also hit search and it's going to pull up any application that you have that's not been submitted yet. So you can go back in and do any of the parts. You can click on each of the tabs, project contacts, budget, and change anything. Once you're ready to submit it and you've got your authorized representative information in here, you're going to submit and close. It's just submit it. When you submit that, it's going to give you a similar screen to this, but it's going to say submitted. It's going to keep your application ID the same. You can choose to attach files at this point if you're ready for that. I think it's better to not do that, and I'll show you how to go back in your application. So now your application is submitted. You want to view your application to see what your status is or attach documents. So you click on view application. Same thing again. You're going to type in or paste in your application ID, or you can hit search. It's going to show you any of your applications that you have. And then it's going to show you a slightly different screen. You have three methods in here to attach documents. And this is where we're going to ask you if we reach back out to you and say, hey, I need a new W-9, or this wasn't quite right, or we need a different map. Anything that we ask you for, you're going to need to attach it in here. So you can click the attachment, which is the first method. There's an upload button, or you can also drag and drop the attachments in mass. The problem with some of these is some of the metadata doesn't get filled in. It doesn't have your attachment types. You need to make sure your document name is indicative of what it is. If it's um, uh, the sitemap, you can have sitemap or site host letter or site host agreement or whatever the document is. If it's named, we're going to look at that and know what it is. So make sure your names are just not image 100 or something very generic. It would be helpful for us to know what you uploaded. Now, the tips on this is don't wait till the last week to request GMS access. If you do, we cannot guarantee that you will get in. The RFP to expand and replace existing community destination ZEV infrastructure was released on the 15th, October 15th. Your budget information should be as accurate as possible. These are competitively compared to each other. So your cost shares amounts need to reflect that. Um, if you're not competitive, you're not going to be awarded. DEQ does reserve the right to partially fund awarded projects. We have partially awarded projects in the DC Fast realm previously. We've had projects that were 4 ports. We only awarded 2 ports. At that point, we do not require you to put in 4 ports. We would only be expecting you to put in 2 ports at that time. So we worked that out through the contracting and the acceptance of the award. Essays, again, are used to assist in evaluating projects that score similarly to determine who the awardees are, who we're going to award. We will not accept paper scanned, emailed, or faxed applications. It has to be through the grant management system. Do not sign any agreements with vendors or start work until your contract is fully executed. I've had to decline awards, pull back awards because people started work too early and we cannot pay a claim for work that was started too early. Do not do that. The application award is not a fully executed contract. The way this works is we'll send you an award letter. You can either accept or decline the award. If you accept the award, it goes into the contracting stage. There's a few pieces of documentation we'll ask you for at that time that you have to finalize, including your host site agreement. Once we have all that documentation, we send that to our contract team. The standardized state contract is used for a contract, and there are no changes to that. They send you a copy of that contract. You read through it and you sign it at that point. If you agree to this, sign it and send it back, then that's still not a fully executed contract. Our contract team has our responsible official sign that contract, and then you will receive back a fully executed contract at that point. That's a mouthful and can't reiterate enough. Do not wait for these. I mean, 4 major holidays. Don't wait till January 13th to be requesting access to the grant management system. That if you do, you're going to have a lot of catch up work to do. As long as you apply for the GMS access before, January 13th or before, then you're guaranteed access. If it's after that, we can't guarantee that you're going to get in. So the applications are due January 31st at 11:59. There are not going to be many people available after 5 o'clock, many as in none after 5 o'clock that are guaranteed to be around. Please submit your application early. Any supporting documentation that we need in the grant management system should be in there as well. If for some reason you submit your application early and we go through there and, hey, you need this, this, or this, you would basically have till January 31st to get that done. Again, we will not accept paper, scan, email, or faxed applications. And we will not accept applications after the due date. It's just, we can't. Once it closes in GMS, it closes. So just our timeline again is the applications do close January 31st. I guess I should have started with when they open. The applications do open in the grant management system tomorrow, November 15th. The applications will close on January 31st, 2025. The proposed applications will be evaluated in February of 2025. We will go into project selections in March, and then we will do our best to make the award announcements in April. And the way the awards are done is we'll send the award letter to the award winners, and then when they respond back, they will release publicly at that point. I would say that if you're not on our mailing list, please subscribe to the email address here and put in the subject line subscribe, and we'll add you to our mailing list. That'll automatically be updated with any updates to the RFP, any updates to the timeline. When we announce awardees, we'll send it out through this first and then post it to our website. For contacts, you have me as the environmental program consultant for DC Fast. Stephen Rice is our supervisor, and then Brian Phillips is our section chief. So we're the three main contacts for this the community and destination infrastructure program. And we'll open it up to see if we have any questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Dave. As a reminder, if anybody has any questions, you can type those into that Q&A box in the lower corner. And so go ahead and send those in whenever you're ready. So I have a couple sort of frequently asked questions here. And so the first one really, if somebody has used the grants management system before, but it has been a while since they've used it, and they get locked out of the system, how do they go about getting back into that system?
First thing to do is to check your NCID to make sure you still have a valid NCID. Once you can log into the NCID system at ncid.nc.gov, then you can attempt to log into the grant management system. If for some reason your grant management system is locked after you've logged into the NCID system, in your welcome letter and that's in this, it has a support email that you can send in. At some point, the system, you might have been kicked all the way out of the grant management system and you'd have to request access again. But you would start by sending a support ticket to the email in your welcome email, which is also in this presentation. Back on the can go back to that. So you would send a support email to the EBS support at nc.dot.gov.
Thank you, Dave. I have a question here. Is it correct that after the contract is awarded, the project must be completed and paid for before the state pays the contracted amount?
Correct. Yes, this is a reimbursement program. You do have to have the project completed, commissioned, the charger's activated, you have to pay the vendor and then show us the proof of payment, and then we will reimburse you up to whatever is in your contract based on your cost share.
Right, another one here. Can regional councils apply on behalf of a group of local governments? And would the charger cap still be 4 for DC and 8 for level 2?
So if you're for each project, yes. So we'd have to look and see for each project, yes. And each entity can only have one application. So if you're going to do it as a group, it might be better to do it as the individual members and be a supporting, have each individual local government, whoever is going to own the property where the charger's sitting, to apply, and you be a co-partner with them. But yes, those caps for each project are still in place. If you have questions about that, that might be a more of a how can we do the partnerships to make sure that you can do maybe more than one project at a time. That would be a call to me.
Right. Are there any text limits to answer the 6 questions on the project details tab?
There are, um, you can't really see it very well on the slide, but I'm just going to go back to that one. There we go. So there's 3,000 words or 3,000 characters for this one, 1316, 1462, 731. I mean, so yes, there are. I mean, we don't expect you to write a novel for each of these. I mean, I don't want to say brevity is a spice of life. You do have to get some information across to us. If for some reason you don't have enough space in here, you can create a second document and have it for an attachment, and it'll be attached to your application.
And is it just those 6 questions or are there any more?
Those are the only 6 questions that we ask. Those are the only 6 essay questions that we have.
So if a project is looking at multiple sites, do they do that in the same application or would they have to submit separate applications?
Okay, they would have to submit separate applications for the DC Fast because all of these are DC Fast related. Um, the organization, and this is where it's going to, depending on how that works, um, we might need to have a couple of talks about how they can apply if they want multiple sites. That's really going to be because you're limited in the system to having one application open for each program. Well, for this program, because it's so specific. So if it's an entity and they want to put, as long as they stay under the 4-port DC fast and the 8-port level 2, then yeah, they can apply all in the same one.
Okay. So my organization does not pay taxes. This is a government organization. Do they need to complete that no overdue taxes form?
Okay, so if you're tax exempt, you're local, then no, you would not. If you're a local government and you don't pay taxes, if you're a nonprofit, then you would have to send in your tax exempt instead of the no overdue taxes.
Are the signed host site agreements required before the application can be processed for approval?
So before the application is processed, we would need just a commitment, site host letter. The site host saying, hey, yeah, I know that they're looking at putting this here. I agree to moving forward with them. I'm interested in doing that. It's a lot less legally binding, but when we get to the contract stage, we do require the host site agreement with them, and we will need a copy of that.
Gotcha. Um, so when does that 2-year contract start? And they
So
have 2 years to complete the project. What is the date in which that starts?
it'll be sometime after the award date when we go into the contracting period. My guess would be sometime in um, when we announce these awards in April. So the contracts will be in April, May. Hopefully, they'll all be done before May. So 2 years from May 2025. So 2026, 2027, April, May is what we're talking about.
Gotcha. Um, so does the organization have to complete all of their work before that 2-year contract is expired?
Okay, so they have to start their claim before that point. So, yes, I mean, these sites would need to be commissioned in the ground, activated, charging vehicles, and then they would need to start their claim, which is proving that it's activated, and then they spend the money and all that in 2 years. So, yes.
Right. So how long does it take to get reimbursed after the organization submits all of their required information?
Um, to go all the way through the process, it takes there's a couple levels of approval, and then I would say it takes about a month. I mean, I've seen them happen because we have to go out. Once you submit your claim, we're going to go out to your site. So, say that takes a week, and then a week for the internal approvals through us. Then it goes to OSB to as a payment. They're going to approve it on their side. So 3 to 4 weeks, a month, maybe. I've seen them happen a lot faster than that. I've seen them happen in a couple of weeks. But it also depends on whether you're an electronic payment or a paper check. As the state moves away from paper checks, they print paper checks less often. Electronic payments are sent every Thursday, I think. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's one day that they just send electronic payments through the system.
Okay. So I'm not having any more questions show up in that Q&A box. So last call, if anybody has a question, go ahead and get it in there. I'll do one more from this frequently asked questions thing. Um, so you said up to 3 people from the organization can have access to the grant management system. Is there a way for them to tell if there are already 3 people, or are they just gonna get their application to the grants management system rejected?
No, if it comes to us and then we see that there's three, we have a tracking list that we'll look at that. But if it's sent back to us, we'll reach back out to you and we'll clean them up at that point. Um, we'll reach out to you directly and say, hey, look, you have these 3 people, Brian, Philip, Stephen, and Dave are already in the grant management system. We need to get Matthew in the system for this business entity, but Brian's no longer working in that capacity. So we would take Brian out and put Matthew in. So that was would come back from the security team to us, and then we would reach out to you.
And could they just use somebody else's information? Say they had somebody as a project manager previously. Could they just use that same information, or would they have to make their own?
They need to make their own NCID because your NCID is you. It follows you around. So once you leave this business, if you go to another entity that has access to the grant management system, we would bring you into the grant management system under that other entity, and you would no longer have access to the grants that you worked on from your previous employment. So you would need your own NCID. If the security team finds out that you're sharing NCIDs, they will terminate that NCID account.
Right. Well, that is all the questions I have listed here. And I'm not seeing any more come in through the Q&A box. So um, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And if you have any more questions about how to get your application submitted, feel free to reach out to us and sign up for that listserv.